Hey guys, Chris the Ultimate Recycler. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to my shed at home. And we're doing another unboxing or unbucketing. I have another bucket here full of random scrap metal and hardware. There's going to be a lot of these. When my shop got packed up, a lot of stuff just got jumbled in and it's pretty much a lucky dip. So let's go through this bucket. Let's see what we find. Let's see what value there is in here. Who knows? What do you reckon? 50 bucks, 100 bucks? Nothing? Let's sort it out. We'll see what's going to be scrap, what we can sell, what we might keep to use because, you know, it might be handy one day. Don't know. Let's have a look. Okay, let's venture into the depths of this mysterious green bucket, see what value we can find. I'll pull stuff out. We'll probably spread it all out on the table and we'll go through it and see what value there is. Most people cleaning up a shed would probably tip all this straight in the skip. So let's see how much actually is rubbish, how much we can save, how much value there is. That jar's quite modern, so there's no value in the jar. And we just have a little bit of random hardware in there. Let's tip that out. What do we got? A spring, a couple of bits, a couple of nails, a little collar. That collar will be brass. Look, we'll spread this hardware out and we'll go through it a little bit more accurately. And we'll probably make up some jars of nuts and bolts and screws which we can sell. So we'll just place that down on the table for now. This next tin, oh, it's a double tin. Let's get this one out. This one's empty. It looks like a, let's move the bucket back a bit. This is probably a biscuit or a cake tin. It's probably quite a vintage one, but because there's no lid, it's of no real value at all. I'll probably use that tin to put bolts in so I can sell them through the shop, bolts or random hardware. So that will be at least usable. If I didn't want to use it, it would just go in the shred steel, just light pressing steel. This other tin that was in it has got a bit of hardware in it. But the actual tin itself is whiskey cake, traditional whiskey cake. First thing I scan for on tins is a barcode. If I see a barcode, I pretty well just either give it away or put it in the scrap steel. 800 grams, so it's not overly old, but there's no barcode. It was a project of the Rotary Club of Collingwood, so it is Australian. So I don't think it's got a lot of value, but I think it's better than, it's not a nothing tin. We might give it a bit of a wash. We might get $5 for that. It is an Aussie tin, and people do collect tins, even though it is in grams. Let's have a look what's inside it. Well, that is an extremely rusty old clip of a Fowler's preserving jar, so just scrap steel for that. We might put that in the other tin for now. We have a stick of plumber's solder. We'll look at that a bit further later. It's certainly not rubbish. This has been quite rusty. I think it's had water in it. I have a large heavy eye bolt there. As dirty and rusty as it is, it's actually still okay. The nuts turn. And in fact, we have a few of those, so we'll put all those in a pile. They're still useful. This looks like a U-clamp from maybe an exhaust system or something, but it doesn't appear to have the other side of it. We'll just spread a lot of this hardware out and we'll group it up towards the end. There's some old pulleys. They're actually cast iron, like a blind pulley. They're very rusty. This has definitely had a bit of water in it. There's a couple of pulleys there. We'll check them with a magnet, but I'm pretty sure they'll be cast iron. When these are in good nick, I will box them up and sell them. These ones, they're not worth washing up. So, and that one's pretty rusty. So that might just go in our heavy melt steel. We'll get better dollars for that than our pressing steel. There's a little pad bolt here, which is useful. A little script looks like a miniature tent peg. That's only going to be scrap. A few more bolts. So we'll gather up all these bolts. A little rusty, but they're still usable. A little angle bracket. That's a magnetic catch for a cupboard, a closing cupboard. That's still quite heavy. Another eyelet bolt. So we'll put all the hardware in one tub. We'll probably be able to sell that separately. A large, slightly domed washer. It's probably up at the top of a car shock absorber. And some small hardware here. And a little bit of wire. I think that's solder. It's very soft again. So that's emptied that tin. There's some little hardware in this plastic bag too, I think. I'm not sure what's in here. Let's have a look. Oh, little machine screws. Okay. Little rusty, but they're still okay. We'll put them in the jar perhaps. So I just had a better look at this tin. It actually has got a use by date on the bottom, which is October 2004. Not quite old enough. I won't really try and sell any tins, even if it's an Australian made tin, after say 2000. Once you get back into 80s or 90s, they're going to be more collectible. We'll just use this tin to put our hardware in. And let's keep going. I'll give you a bit of a look. Yeah, it looks like some door locks and some other bits of metal. I'm not sure what these brackets are off. There's a few of them. I can't imagine they're going to have... I think they're obviously a specialised use for something. They're not just a general shelf mounting bracket or anything. We'll put them all aside. One thing I probably like to do is keep things together, because if you start throwing each item out as you find it, you might find later that it's a part of something else, and then you've got to go and rescue it. Oh, we have a chisel. This is a Stanley, an Australian made wood chisel. It's quite rusty. It's a little chippy on the blade. You see that there? Got a few chips there, but it would clean up all right. Certainly saleable. You know, there's no worries about that. I will give it a bit of a clean up, probably just with fine steel wool. Give it a bit of a scrub up, and it's got to be at least $5 in the shop. We have some hardware here. These look like nails, so still perfectly good, brand new bullet head nails. It's only probably not even half a pack, but we did find one in the jar before, so that can go in there. Now we have some door locks. These are Lockwood, and I think I saw the side bracket for it somewhere. Might have gone into the bottom. These do sell. Don't get a great deal, and I do find a lot of them in the shed. If you're a scrapper and you're not interested in selling stuff, they are generally a die cast, or like a cast zinc. It's magnetic because of what's inside, so the actual casing isn't magnetic. The end part is usually brass. That plate on the back will be steel, but one screw pulls them apart, so they're pretty easy to get apart if you just want to scrap them, but I'll get better money selling them than actually for scrap metal. Okay, we have a jar here of all sorts of bits and pieces. We'll tip these into a tray in a minute, and that's actually a Fowler's Vicola jar. Number 20 is a very common size, but some of the Fowler's sizes are quite collectible and quite valuable. This is a common one, but it's an older one. It looks like it's probably, oh, that's an early symbol. I'll show you that when I clean it up a bit. This one dates to around World War I era, so I reckon we could probably sell that. We'll tip the little bits out in a minute. Let's get some other containers out of here. Here's just a standard regulation steel tin. It could have been soup, it might have been baked beans. No value in the tin. It's full of a bit more hardware, so we'll tip that out again and have a look. That's a spring off the end of one of those Oki straps, a stretchy tie-down cord, so that's no good. And because it's only thin gauge, it can't go in our heavy steel. So we'll put that with a shred. We'll tip that tin out in a minute. We have some hooks. Some like butcher's hooks. I use these in the shop to hang things off ladders, so they are very handy. I have often had customers ask me if I sell them, so they're going to be worth better money than scrap metal. So we'll save all our hooks. There's actually quite a few in here. Oh, hooks galore. A little bit more hardware. We'll just put that on the counter. That's a nice old, quite a heavy spring-loaded latch. I'm not sure what that's off, but it's quite an old one. More hooks, more of these brackets, a little bit more hardware. We have cut tacks. I don't really know many people that use tacks for anything, and they certainly don't sell well. There's not very many there. So sometimes I make up a box of just assorted nails and I put the tacks in with it, and someone will buy just an assortment of nails, so we might put all the nails together. Here's the lock keeper for that Lockwood lock here. So it goes that way. So now that we've got both parts of that, it will get at least $5 in the shop. We have random other little little plastic bags of screws, I think they are. Let's tip these ones out and have a look. Oh, that's just a real assortment. There's some self-tappers, there's some machinery screws, there's a few little nuts, so they can go in that jar. A few more bolts, there's another hook. We'll put all the bolts in that other tin we had earlier. In fact, I'll tip the rest of this bucket out into a tray now. There we go, you guys will get a better view of this now. Now, I like to have a plastic tray or a non-magnetic tray anyway, and I'll show you why in a minute. But let's pull out the obvious stuff. We have another hook. We have some just old bits of brackets, bits of steel. I tend to keep the angled ones. We'll put them aside. That's a spring steel clip off something. And it's non-magnetic, so we'll check that one out. That looks like a little curtain hook. I don't really want those. And that's a very dirty angled bracket. We won't keep those ones. But they will go in the shred steel. Another one of those brackets. Okay, that's got it down by a fair bit. Now, what else? What are the bigger bits? We have a lock that may well go with this lock, because the metal tag at the end here actually fits in the slot on the back of those. So you can use a key from one side of the door and this part for the other side. Chances are we haven't got the key, so I'm not going to worry about that. We'll put that aside for now. Some big hardware can go in with our bolts. That one's a galvanized plumbing fitting. It's actually just a blanking socket to seal off a pipe, so they're handy sometimes. I do often have an assorted box of plumbing fittings, which I would throw that in. Right, now we're down to the small stuff. This is why I like a plastic tray, because we can use a magnet and we can pick out anything magnetic. That's the back plate off an early, probably 1920s, like a cupboard pull. It's a bit of furniture hardware, but it's broken, so we know that's magnetic and go in with our shred. Same with other bent little bits of wire and bent nails and things. A little clamp there, we'll keep that aside. What have we got here? Any hardware that's okay and not too rusty I'll put in that jar, but bent nails and little broken bits just go in our shred. That's a good wood screw. Yeah, it's a bit usable still. That can go in our bolts. And what else do we have in here? We'll just get everything magnetic out. That's a magnetic catch for a cupboard again, but it's only a small amount of metal in there. That'll still go into with the shred steel. We have some more small screws, a nail that's bent, some little curtain hooks, I think. So I don't want the curtain hooks, but the hardware can all go in this jar. Another self-tapping screw, half a washer. Who has half a washer? A full washer. That's a bolt where someone's cut the head off. That's about 1/4 inch, 6mm. It can just go in our heavy gauge steel. Another dirty bracket. All sorts of bits of hardware, and I just sort them pretty quickly. That's a nice bolt. Nothing wrong with that one. And it's quite relaxing sorting out stuff. I think many of us scrappers actually enjoy the whole process of sorting. So we got a lot of fluff in the bottom of it, and that's a good thing about a magnet, is that it does pull out stuff out of the rubble and you get to clean it all up. I think we're done. Nothing else magnetic in there. And what that tells us is these large wood screws are most likely to be brass, and I can tell they are. They've got that yellow look to them. And a lot of early wood screws, they did use brass, and they're in very good condition. I do keep some brass wood screws here for projects, but I also fill jars with them, and they sell very well, much better value than what you would get for your price of brass per kilo. So I don't scrap these. There's another one, and there's one we pulled out earlier. So I'll put them in a jar and they can be sold. A little bit of electrical. These little crimp terminals, they're unused, they're actually still new, and I have a jar for those, so they can go in a jar. Now there's more of those. Now obviously if they've been used, they're no good. They will have a microscopic amount of brass in there. This one has been crimped as well, but we may as well chop the wire off. I don't think you'd get away with putting them in dirty brass. They're just too contaminated, so that will be rubbish. This large piece of rubber is probably off a car shock absorber. I think we had a washer off that earlier, so that's just going to be rubbish. Piece of old rubber. There's a plumbing fitting here that did not stick to a magnet. Let's try a file, and it's definitely brass, a nice yellow. While we're at it with the file, let's check this clip we had before, which was non-magnetic. It's either brass or stainless steel, I would suggest, and it's quite hard, and I can see it's just silver, so that will be stainless steel. So I have a tub for stainless. We'll put all our scrap separately. What else is left in the tray? We have a light globe, an automotive light globe, and I can actually see the filament. That's still a perfectly good light globe. So again, I'll put that in a jar. As I get a jar full of them, they will sell through the shop. There's also a fuse here, which I do exactly the same thing with. Always keep fuses. Bit of broken plastic. That's a plastic bung out of an electrical switchboard or something like that. An electrical junction box. I don't really need that one. A hose joiner here, but that's actually brass again. You can tell by the colour. And of course it wasn't magnetic. I don't worry about saving those. Most people don't use brass fittings in the garden anymore, so that can go in our brass bin. And the rest of it's just a bit of rubble, so that can go in the bin. So at this stage, all we have for landfill is just that, but we still have two jars or jar and a tin to empty here. So we'll get back to that in a tick. Alright, I've cleaned out our tray. Let's have a look at what's in these other few things. And we will wash that jar up. I'm sure we'll be able to get $5 for that. Let's see if we can see the mark on the bottom of it now. Okay, that mark at the top here, that is an Australian glass manufacturer's symbol that they used up until the early 1920s. So that dates it fairly early as far as these Fowler's preserving jars go. So pretty good. We'll wash that one up. Okay, most of this jar looks like it's just little brackets. I think they're magnetic, yes. And they're specialised brackets for something I don't think I'm going to have use for them. There's a little cupboard latch. But it's a bit seized up. Actually, they normally have rollers. This one doesn't. But I don't think we need to keep any of these. We've also got some curtain hooks again. So I think most of this jar is just going to go in the shred, but at least it will get recycled. And by picking things up with a magnet, we do get to sort out what's steel and what isn't. The self-tapping screws can go in with our small hardware. That one's a bit rusty. So something's obviously been pulled apart here, and these brackets actually had these screws holding them up. There's a drill bit. Feels like it's pretty blunt, but I do put all those in a jar as well. Lots of self-tapping screws. Another little angle bracket. So this jar is nice and quick to sort out. I find a magnet actually makes this job really quick and easy. What's this? Oh, it looks like part of a fishing rod, a little eyelet from a fishing rod. It's not magnetic. It may be nickel-plated brass. Okay, that's the end of the magnetic stuff. So this screw, oh, that one's a magnetic one as well. That's still usable. We have another one of these little plugs. We have a connector. I do put those in a jar as well. And another light globe. This one's the festoon style, and the element looks okay in that too. So we'll get on to the last little container here. Now when you're cleaning out someone's shed like I do all the time, you get to make a bit of a judgment call on how organised they were. Some people have every container just a total lucky dip. Other people are more organised and have all the same sort of bolts in each container. It's just interesting how different people organise their sheds or don't. Now all these wood bolts, even though they're a bit rusty, they're still quite usable. So we might put those back in this tin. I'll give them a bit of a clean up so they look a little bit more respectable. And there's even some fairly new ones here. Okay, that's all of those. Now we have a piece of wire which is magnetic, so that can go in our shred. A fairly long bolt that's quite rusty. It's still usable. The thread's okay. A little latch hook thing for like a cupboard door. We'll just put that aside for now. And we have a little connector here, a electrical wire connector that can go with our junction box thing. And some sort of, I think this is like a conduit joiner. It's not brass, obviously, it sticks to a magnet. I think we can probably put that just with a heavy steel. I don't get enough of those to make up a tub of them. And another little crimp-on connector that's okay. That's the end here. So we're all finished on this bucket. It was really a low-value bucket, actually. There was no treasures in here. But the point of doing this is to show you what I do with stuff. And we've got it all spread out. Let's run through it. And I've got a list. Of course I've got a list. I'll show you that in a second. You know you've got a bucket of junk really when the best value is one of the jars in there that had stuff in it. The hooks, the chisel I cleaned up a little bit. It would come up a lot cleaner if you wanted to, but it's in good nick. The solder I'll talk about in a tick. The plumber's solder, I straightened it out and gave it a quick scrub with a wire brush so it's a bit more presentable. The lock, some hardware, nails, stuff that's going to shred, a small pile of rubbish, and all the other stuff spread out. So let's have a look at the list. We start from, we're in descending order, or ascending, descending. We're starting with the best thing first. The Fowler's jar, I reckon I'll get $5. The hooks, if you go to a hardware shop and buy some hooks for hanging plants in your fernery, you will pay probably $5 per hook. So we should have no problems getting $5 for the lot there. As I mentioned, I get people asking me all the time if they're for sale. We'll get $5 for the chisel. The stick of solder, $5. Well, I just checked the local hardware chain online and they still sell plumber's solder, which I think is 60% tin and 40% lead, and they're $15 per stick. So we could possibly get $10 for that, but I'm just going to write down 5. But it just shows you, if you threw that in with your lead, scrap lead, which I think is paying about $1.80 a kilo at the moment, that's about, I think, a quarter of a kilo, 250 grams. So you're looking at about 40 cents worth of scrap. We'll get $5 for it, and that's cheap. The lock will get 5, as I mentioned, back to the list. The wood bolts too, and the bolts too. Now my price there is based on, if that was full of just assorted hardware, random bolts, I would get $5. So it's only, it's about $2 worth. And much the same as these wood bolts. I normally sell them in a bigger tin than this, and they sell quite well. And if you go to the hardware store and price out just one, you're going to pay $2 or something for it. So pretty good value for someone. I find they sell really quickly, so I valued that about at $2. Similar with the nails, I wrote down just $1, because what I'll do is I'll put a whole lot of nails in a box as a sorted selection and put $5 in the box. So that represents about $1 worth. And the other thing I wrote down $1 for was this little clip. It's quite a heavy duty clip. It's maybe off a horse rug or something. And I've just got a random $1 box of bits and pieces, and someone will grab that out for $1 for sure. The rest of our value is in scrap metal. Now, there wasn't much scrap metal, and I did weigh it up. I know I've gone to a bit of extra trouble here, but it gives you guys a bit of an idea. The heavy melt steel, which is greater than 6 mil or 1/4 inch, that weighed out at just over half a kilo, at around about, I think it's $3.50, 35 cents a kilo, 350 a ton at the moment. So that's about 20 cents. The brass was around about 50 cents, quite a good heavy piece in there. And the rest of this lock, I don't have a key for it. I would put that in dirty brass, which equals around about 30 cents or 20 cents or something. It weighs quite a lot, that. The other bits of scrap I didn't calculate at all. They're too small. That's a bit of solder again, which would probably go into lead, a little bit of stainless steel. One of the wires I clipped off, the other one took off across the shed, and I'll probably never find it again. So negligible value there. So with our scrap metal, we basically got to $1, and you can see all the other stuff added up to 31. Plus I've added in an extra $1 for the sundries, which includes things I put in jars. A fuse, I'll put that in with plumbing fittings. I don't know what, I'll put that in with hardware somewhere. I have a jar for the little connectors. I have a jar for drill bits. The little angle brackets I'll put in a little tub. Brass screws I keep, and they sell quite well. Springs I also keep. Electrical connectors. This little, they can probably just go in with that hardware. The only reason I'm taking this key ring is that I have a whole tub of old keys, and I've just been putting 5 old keys on a ring, and they sell for $5. So I'll use the rings. Automotive globes, again, I'll put in a jar. Same with these wood screws. I have a jar here for pop rivets. I have jars for everything. And when I'm sorting people's shed stuff, it's amazing how quickly all the jars add up and how much value I can get. Now, here's a heavy jar full of vintage wood screws. Now, this is more than what I'd normally sell. These are ones I've kept at home for use with woodwork projects. But if I have one jar of woodwork screws, which I would throw these ones into, that weighs about 1 kilo. Now that one, for reference, weighs 3 kilos. So maybe a small jar, something like this, full of woodwork screws, I would sell for $5. And people buy it because hardware's expensive, and especially people that like doing up old furniture, they love these old screws. So $5 for about 1 kilo is much better than they would probably just normally go in the thread, the shred, which you're getting like 20 cents a kilo for. So difference between 20 cents and $5 is substantial. It's worth my while keeping a jar on the shelf and throwing them in until it's full and then selling them. Now, again, I have a shop, you guys don't, but it just shows you that there's a lot of value in stuff that if you fill up jars and if you're doing shed clean outs all the time, well, it's worth saving it, and you could even have a garage sale and sell off a few. So there you go. So our total, did we scan to the total? $33. $33 from a low value bucket of stuff that a lot of people would tip straight in the skip. And all we have left, other than what I've written down, is all these light brackets, which I'm just going to put in the shred steel. I don't sell that. I'll just send it out to the transfer station to get recycled. The only rubbish from this whole bucket is that. Not the lid, just what's on it. So I'm pretty happy that we've managed to keep most of it out of landfill. It's going to be useful for people. I'm going to make some money. And probably the most thing I'm happy about is that it's another bucket of junk out of my shed that's been sorted out. And if you haven't seen any of my videos lately and you haven't been following my channel, I did a massive moved from my shop, and a lot of stuff got put in an emergency storage shed here, and that's just one bucket from the front of it. This shed goes back probably 35 feet, and it's full to the roof right to the back. So we've got lots of unboxing to do. There'll be a lot more interesting stuff than what was in this bucket, but the point of me doing these is to show you what I do with the stuff, how I run my business, how I make some dollars, and how I keep stuff out of landfill. So guys, if you got to the end of this video, well done. It wasn't overly exciting, but I'm determined to film everything, because the best thing is that it's actually making me do this. It's making me sort out buckets. I've emptied another one. It's generating a bit of extra stock for the shop. It's helping me sort out tubs of stuff I've had lying around. And when I go to do a project and I need a bolt or something, I have a bit more stock in my shed to go and use. So thanks for watching. Hope you're enjoying these videos. There are lots more unboxings and unbucketings to come. We'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.